Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? Happy Saturday. Just give me a minute to prepare. Wow, a lot of people coming in. Time for people to fill in. I'm in a good mood. I'm just gonna go over a little video I made to talk about the next section of the timeline. Then we're gonna look at some bigger implications. And then we're just gonna hang out again. Feel free to chat, guys. It's easier for all of us if we can engage. If you got any questions? I'm curious, for anyone who's here, what's an article that you remember of mine that comes to mind when you think of me? You're like, oh, that's the guy who wrote that one, who did this one. Maybe I'm too quiet. I'll turn the music down. All right. People filling in. Give it another minute or two as I gather more things to share so I can be swift with it once we're in it. Like I said, I have a little bit prepared, probably about a half hour's worth, and then we can just hang out and talk. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. Big Brother is yes. I want this one open. All right, I'll keep on doing this. We watch this real quick, like.
Modern labor is defined by zero redundancy scheduling and the extraction of every available second of human energy. You watch your paycheck by less every month, while coworkers turn their anger sideways, fighting each other over the scraps. This condition, known as schema collapse, creates the paralyzing sensation that the American economy has broken down and that no one at the wheel understands how to fix it. The logic of the corporate state, drafted 250 years ago, continues to execute with relentless precision. The architecture remains intact. This pervasive fatigue is the intended byproduct of an unbroken extraction engine. In 1933, a coalition of Wall Street elites attempted the business plot, a physical military coup to seize the United States government. The plot collapsed because physical force is loud and vulnerable. Relying on human generals like Smedley Butler exposed the architects to congressional testimony and public outrage. The elite learned from this failure, realizing they could camouflage the extraction engine by capturing legal and financial institutions directly. They abandoned the military push and initiated the shadow rebuild, a quiet, bloodless takeover of the republic. By the 1950s, the boundary between corporate power and state power dissolved at United Fruit Company. The geopolitical tension in Guatemala involved mundane mathematics. United Fruit used fraudulent land valuations to evade sovereign taxes, claiming their property was worth pennies while extracting massive profits from it. When a democratic government audited their math and attempted to pay the company based on those exact valuations, United Fruit initiated the mechanisms required to destroy that government. The 1954 overthrow served as a targeted extraction event, where the U.S. military acted as a mercenary force for private corporate ledgers. In 1961, President Dwight D. Eisenhower delivered a televised farewell address, warning the public about the rise of the military-industrial complex. The true weapon of this era was the cost-plus contract, a mathematical equation that removed all risk from corporate enterprise. This algorithm socialized corporate failure onto the taxpayer, bearing the costs of every bloated budget, while guaranteed profit was siphoned directly into private vaults. The defense apparatus was transformed from a shield of the republic into a permanent engine for taxpayer extraction. In August 1971, President Nixon decoupled the United States dollar from the gold standard, beginning a month of catastrophic economic shifts. This chart tracks worker productivity against hourly compensation. For decades, both lines rose in tandem. But printing pure fiat currency hollowed out the producing class. Look at the 1971 gap. Productivity climbed, but compensation flatlined. The system officially decoupled your wages from your actual output. 8 days later, the Powell Memorandum provided a tactical blueprint for corporations to fund a total war on American institutions, from media to the courts. By the end of August 1971, the system successfully starved the working class of their wealth and built the media apparatus to ensure they never understood why. The business plot of 1933 succeeded by changing its tactics, abandoning military uniforms to capture the currency and relocate to the boardroom. The screaming partisan battles over culture and identity serve as a buffer, encoding financial extraction into moral language so the population never looks up to see the building's owners. This is the horizontal war. The vertical war remains the actual conflict, a struggle between top and bottom occurring while the prisoners police each other. Your economic suffering is an engineered architecture. Human hands built this mathematical prison at Camp David, and because it was designed by humans, it can be dismantled by them. Stop looking left. Stop looking right. Just look up.
There's some more history for you guys. So, I hope everyone here has at least a little bit caught up with the current series that I've been writing, 1773 to now, or The Ghost in the Machine, The Ghost of the East India Company. I like making those videos because it's a good passive way to let it sink in before I get into the nitty-gritty with these presentations, and then also with the articles. There's like multiple ways to let it digest. There's an ecosystem of information here. Whenever we talk about these stuff, we're not talking about politics, okay? We don't debate politics here. Politics is the marketing department. We are here to conduct a forensic autopsy, said it before, say it again, on the American economy. We will trace the exact math of how the Republic was hijacked. Welcome to part 4 of The Ghost in the Machine. This is the shadow rebuild. Different from the system switch in the Shadow Arc. which is the 911 switch. Basically, they've been messing with our system all the time, so it's hard to keep track with all these names because there's no official names for them either. But yeah, let's dive into this. I got a slide deck here. To start here, we're exhausted. I know you're exhausted, but I need you to understand that your exhaustion is not a personal failure. It's a deliberate architectural feature. The system wants you fighting in layer 2. That's the horizontal war, like Bob said in the previous comment. The left versus right, divide and conquer. That's partisan theater. The culture wars, all that stuff. You are too tired to look down at layer 1, which is the vertical war, the balance sheet, the economic terror. The system doesn't have two sides. It has two marketing departments for the exact same extraction machine. And today, we're going to look at that machine. So I'm trying to... Too many things on my desktop. To understand the prison we live in today, you have to realize that the Phantom is sorry. The Phantom is the ghost of the East India Company, and it never actually died. It just upgraded its host. Now, what does that mean? So the East India Company was the British Army. The British Army's was bigger than the British Army. It was the biggest company based out of England. It was a huge monopoly. It had a bigger army than Britain did back then. And what I'm trying to argue is that the corporate consolidation of power never left. How could it? Back then it was Britain that was the strongest, right? And then it was America. Well, it's because the corporate consolidation, the power moved. Version 1.0, you gotta read the previous parts. So this goes over here. But the 1933 physical coup failed. That was part 3. Alright? General Smedley Butler blew the whistle. He's the guy who wrote the War is a Racket. And from that failure, the extractive elite learned a profound lesson. You do not need to sponsor a violent military coup if you can just quietly capture the bureaucracy. And I stopped there for a second on my words because it made me realize they took the exact same advice that I gave in the Velocity Hostage, talking about the Ontario fire, where I was saying the aggressive violence is not a good way to get public support or to stay out of the radar, right? They can throw away your life and all that stuff. So they didn't want to risk all the bad PR. Okay, so they retreated in the shadows and they spent the 50 years following the World War building an invisible prison. And this is the Shadow Rebuild. 4 protocols implemented to ensure the house always wins. Protocol 1. Capture global finance. The year is 1944. Europe is in rubble, millions are dead, and while the working class of the world buries its sons, 730 delegates from 44 nations gather at Bretton Woods. They told us, the report, we are building the IMF and the World Bank to anchor global peace. But here's the receipt. They rejected the symmetric Keynes plan and executed the asymmetric White plan. They forced the global south into structural debt servitude. They didn't export democracy. They exported permanent death. debt and death. Protocol 2. Merge the monopolies with state intelligence. So it's already getting pretty dense, right? When they entrench themselves in institutions, you start getting all this jargon, all these words for corporate systems, right? 1954, the United Fruit Company has a tax problem in Guatemala. This is a pretty famous one. The democratically elected president, I can't pronounce that name, tries to buy back unused land at the exact price UFCO claimed it was worth on their taxes. But the UFCO called their lawyers, the men who used to run Sullivan and Cromwell, the Secretary of State and his brother, the director of the CIA. The CIA acts as the private Pinkertons for a fruit conglomerate balance sheet. We authorized a $3 million taxpayer budget to violently overthrow a sovereign democracy. We bled to protect their bananas. Protocol 3. Annihilate free market risk. 1961. The military-industrial complex solidifies. This isn't capitalism. This is the mathematics of the riskless void. It's the cost plus a monopoly. The state guarantees the market. The taxpayers fund the R&D, but the corporate board privatizes all of the profit. The Hebert Committee audited this. 95% of DoD contracts bypassed competitive bidding in 1958. 95% is crazy. 721 retired generals walked straight out of the Pentagon and onto the Board of Defense Contractors. It is a closed-loop wealth extraction engine. It's crazy. It's the revolving door. Protocol 4, the final lock, capture the regulators. August 23rd, 1971. Corporate lawyer Lewis Powell drafts a confidential memo for the United States Chamber of Commerce, and it is declared a heavily financed war on the American democratic feedback loop. They abandon fragmented lobbying. They dump capital into permanent ideological infrastructure like think tanks and corporate PACs, like the stuff we're dealing with today. They triangulate academia, media, the judiciary, and politics. The absolute permanent structural capture of the regulatory state. But the death blow came just days earlier. August 15th, 1971. The Nixon shock. We close the gold window. Money ceases to be a ledger of expended human energy and it becomes a political instrument of temporal theft. Now, central banks turn on the flat dial. Financial institutions absorb that raw capital first, hyperinflating assets and equities. By the time that diluted currency trickles down to the working class, consumer prices have surged. A dollar earned in 1971 lost 62% of its purchasing power by 1985. The working class absorbed the inflation. The elite absorbed the assets. The 1971 graph. This is the murder weapon. Look at the chart. From 1948 to 1971, if you worked harder, you were paid more. The line tracks flawlessly. But, well, not even flawlessly, to be honest with you. I disagree with the way I wrote the script there. But it's better off than it becomes. The overdrive kicks in, right, after 1971. The line violently breaks. Cumulative net productivity skyrockets into the stratosphere. Real hourly compensation completely flatlines. Kind of nuts. I've seen this graph and other iterations of it. 1971, 1970, 1972. Those are the years where things go out of control, and it has only gotten worse and worse and worse. I'm so off script right now, but it's because this fact right here, this chart right here, should be on the tip of the tongue of every single elected politician, whether you're left or right. I don't give a fuck. I don't understand why it's not. You're generating more wealth than ever, and they just engineered a 37% mathematical gap to seamlessly extract your surplus and keep it all. And how do they keep you from burning the building down when you see that graph? Schema collapse. The Cassandra algorithm. They blast layer 2 culture war noise at you from every screen to induce learned helplessness. Even in my chat, all over Substack, I use people's Substack chats who practice this kind of behavior where they go out of their way to seek the things that only divide us more, discuss things which could be important, but the framing of it all makes an enemy of your neighbor. While you're screaming about identity, they eradicate the single earner household. They institute bracket creep to tax you on your own artificial inflation. And they turn the basic utility of shelter, housing, into a speculative financial asset. If you are fighting over identity, you are too exhausted to look at the balance sheet. Which brings us to today, 2026. And the mask is entirely off. The extraction grid is digitized, bloodless, and fully automated. Look at the live nodes running now. Node 1, ICE detention. Guaranteed minimum quotas. 90% of them in for profit cages. The GEO group stock up 700%. The margin is on human bodies here. Now, Node 2, the munitions surge. More bodies. $5.6 billion burned in 48 hours in the Middle East. The strategic objectives completely fail, but the RTX and Lockheed stock prices surge. Node 3, AI data centers. The new munitions factories subsidize blank checks to process surveillance grids while our public infrastructure literally crumbles. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was mathematically designed to function. The business plot of 1933 did not fail. It just put on a suit, captured the fiat currency in 1971, and taught us all to cheer for the GDP line while we drowned. The prison is invisible, and the prison is complete. But we are here because we see the bars. We are done apologizing and we are done operating in their timeline. Phase 2 is locked. The Rebels contract. This is the tactical deployment menu. We are building the infrastructure that replaces their media empire. We are building the skiffs. Lantern skiffs, in case you wanted to know. Bright lights make up for the fact that they're one big lighthouse. Drives us all into the ridge. We're no longer fighting for time. We are fighting for territory. Stop looking left. Stop looking right. And look up. The ghost in the machine is real, but so are we. Let's get to work. I hope the music wasn't too loud. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. If nobody has any questions, I don't even know if you were paying attention. Because I don't even understand fucking everything I just read. I understand a lot of it. But we can learn this shit together. Well, I'm sure you've got plenty of questions then. I have all the research. I'll show y'all. We can learn it together. Let me just make it a little neater. All these research papers from the series so far. Make sure you can see it. I'll make it smaller so we can all see it like that. That's easier, right? But yeah, all these research papers over here I've made for this series. And this AI has it all in there. Has all the information ready. It accesses the information uploaded. It prioritizes it before any internet stuff. So it's going through all this research I gave it. We can ask what it means. And we can ask it to compare to the internet stuff too if we want to. Now, let's see what the AI says to this. I have my own answer, Bob. The courts also have been captured, and so it's futile to attempt legal action. Now what? I'm just curious. Let's see about that. What Google wants to say. But my answer is, and it's not an easy answer because I like to think that most of the world doesn't want a violent uprising, so I like to think of solutions that don't involve that. And what I think is that we need to become more legitimate than the current system by creating our own self-governance, but obviously that's so crazy to even think about. I'm not even a type of person who can organize like that. So this says to your question, Bob, the sources confirm your assessment about the judicial being captured. However, the sources outline a precise actionable strategy. Yes, we know to not get distracted. Yes, we know we want to look at the receipts. Yep, we want to make sure we have the facts by looking at the ledgers for whatever we can. Become an active unprogrammer. I feel like me and you are already doing that, Bob. Build the escape tunnel, hand out lanterns. Yeah. So since my AI helped me make these papers, it does it wrote what I said. What I know what to do, and that is to create a communication ecosystem for us to build that alternative governance that we can. But I'm not going to be the one to build it because I don't have the resources. I don't have know-how. Everyone has different skills. I know media things. I know research things. I don't know how to organize a working government. So yes, that's why it answered this way, is because it derived from my research papers what I coded my AI to have for an answer, which is to help with the psychological conditioning. Because that's what I know I can do best with my skills, is to help clarify things and to confront the schema collapse. Yes, a general strike. So the way I look at it, Bob, is you're right. A general strike's a way to do that, but why can't we ever do a big enough general strike that works? Because of that schema collapse. Because we can't reach enough people to think that we have their back and they have our back. You know, we don't have that convergence yet. So that's what I focus on really, really hard. And why I agree with what this AI said as an answer It's more important to become an active unprogrammer right now than to just keep on asking for a strike. We need more people to be in the mindset for a strike first. Not saying you're wrong, but we're the minority here. We are still social outcasts slightly. I think it's more normal to think the way we do now, but there's more people just trying to get it made in the system, and survival of the fittest, whatever is how they're thinking, while they keep voting for their politician, hoping that the legislation will fix it. It's depressing, Bob. I hear you. Especially when we get to the point, like, when you think I'm not a super genius. I wish I was really good at computer programming. I'm struggling to update the website to make it more user friendly, even though it functions well. I want it to be more attractive to people so that they spend more time on there than Substack, because the Substack has so much noise. It would be nice if we could create a community elsewhere, but it takes me a lot of time to do that. There's so many skills that we need to all work together. Yeah, I'm always open to work with people, by the way. Like, if you want to organize a structured panel for like a weekly podcast, anybody, like, that's something else I've been wanting to do but haven't had time to think about. And I know podcasts, whatever, it sounds like a waste of time. It's more like, people are going to be listening to noise anyway, so let's fill the airwaves with our noise. That's how I look at that. Tell me more about mutual aid. I don't know exactly what that is. Or maybe I do and I just having a brain fart. Yeah, well, it's not even an information deprivation, okay? Hear me out. It's what's the word? It's too much congestion. There's too much noise, and they have the machines that can spit it out faster than we can even read it. So, like, that's why it's possible for me to get these receipts. That's why it's possible for me to put this stuff together, is because all the information is fucking there. Yeah, I know there's some secret things, I'm sure, but there's so much that's public. But all the noise, it makes sense not a lot of people get to hear it. Or when they do hear it, it's just more noise to them. That's what we're dealing with here, is this sensation overload. Are they really? Or are they just part of the economic grinding machine? Aren't they usually in low-income countries hired by the Zionists to do the troll farms? They're usually just people in really low income situations that are hired. Yeah, Zionism is messed up in its own reasons for the genocide and the way that they're thinking of other just othering other people, you know, putting themselves above others. But really, Zionism is a front for masquerading just the consolidation of wealth. It's not like all Zionists are extracting from people. Even though I disagree with the Zionist way of thinking, we need to focus on the fact that rich people are just taking advantage of Zionism. Zionism is still awful. I don't support Zionism at all. I'm just saying it is a separate thing. The way I look at it, like, Israel's captured by the elites. But Netanyahu and Bibi, they're just wicked happy about it. They don't mind having an oligarchy because oligarchies love war, so they support it. And America's actually a little less entrenched in the elite infrastructure, even though we are still totally entrenched in it. We're entrenched enough that Israel PACs can totally flood our Congress with not even the smallest legislation concerning Israel. So all the lack of action taken towards Israel, in my opinion, is proof of elite extraction more than anything, and they've been just using Israel as a place to do it. And yes, there are real Zionists there that believe the Zionist thing, but that's not what's funding it and fueling it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Weird. Night, Bob. Yes, exactly. So it's one big loop of unaccounted for money. So it's not even necessarily that the governments are doing these things. It's that they were set up years ago, and that's why this series is so important. The blueprints that allow for them to go make these choices unaccounted for has been laid out through years, and we've just been watching it happen. And it's all like they're working through legal means now. It's crazy. All these things are happening legally, except for obviously. That's why they needed Trump to be in office, to do the illegal stuff for them. And now they got Bibi doing illegal stuff and Trump doing illegal stuff. Alright. I'm sorry if the music really was that bad during the presentation. I thought it was fine. It helps me read from a script when I'm listening to music too. I get more into it. I feel like I'm like a character in like a TV show. Yeah, because even though they have impunity, doing illegal things gives bad PR, and then you have less customer base. So like they still don't want to do illegal things. It's risky. But that's why they made so many things that used to be illegal legal now. Or you just have to pay a small fine. Well, in retrospect, it's small, even though none of us could ever afford it. Alright, I'm gonna transition to doing some other things, but I'm gonna put up a be right back screen for now. But yeah, the article's pretty much written. Like I said, there's some things I don't fully understand, and I use AI to help me write it, so I'm not going to publish it until I know I fully understand it, and I'll probably make more edits. So I'll probably come out tomorrow night. Show me the receipts on that, Burnt Boomer. My inbox is open. Show me data why that's more important. And I'm being serious. I'm not trying to be condescending. It's just I've heard claims like that, and I've never seen data that makes me agree with you. Never. And I work off of empiric data. That's why I call myself an education channel, all right? I have to have some basis. Yeah, like whatever you read to convince you that, send that to me. Like, I know pesticides are bad and like aerosols bad. I know consumer products are bad. If that's what you mean, I'm sorry, then I agree with you. But I feel like you're trying to say like the government's intentionally spraying things in the air. I don't think they're doing that. But yeah, I like having conversations with people who really want to learn and want to teach others. So if you wanted to send me that, we could talk about it in private after. All right, I'm gonna be right back. Alright, alright. I see those links. I was looking at them while I was moving around. I have a few things to say. I see the Congress Gov link. So that's the Clear Skies Act, introduced in 2025, and the primary sponsor is Marjorie Taylor Greene, with very few co-sponsors, and it wants to make it illegal to conduct weather modification. Just because people made a bill to ban it doesn't mean it's real. That's not evidence. But allow me to continue, because I know you sent me a few. You said you sent a Daily Mail. Don't read Daily Mail. That's a tabloid. Like, they're designed to sell ads. They don't have to be factual. So just ignore Daily Mail whenever you see it. But that DTIC link, that's a receipt. When I said receipt, that's a receipt, okay? So that's a real 1996 Air Force paper. And it's a real primary source document, okay? So I give you credit there. Like, those are the things I'm looking for. You brought a real piece of paper to the table. I respect that. But let's look at what that document actually is. It's a speculative research paper, okay? Like, all I had to do is look at the abstract to understand that they're not saying that this is things that they're doing or that they can actually do or they have researchers actually researching. It was a speculative research paper written by military students. When I looked at the authors, they're students. It's a hypothetical battlefield tactics thing. My opinion in general, man, I don't want to fact check all your links, but I just want to give my opinion, and this is an opinion. And I think it's a pretty strong opinion with data behind it, but I want to say it's an opinion. They don't need multi-trillion-dollar secret atmospheric spraying programs just to suppress us. They don't need that. Look around you, man. Like, do you really think that's because of that? I've been trying to prove how it's not that crazy things are the way they are. We've kind of allowed them to set the groundwork, and we can see the breadcrumb trail without this being true. The geoengineering site, yeah, I don't want to get too into that. I don't agree with what they're doing. They're not. It feels like they're taking advantage of people who know that something's wrong, and they're using scientific jargon without any data. I could do a deep dive into that. But that's why I had said I didn't want to get into that. It's because I'd have to do a real deep dive to prove it right or wrong. I think it's because I'm holding the mic in my hand. Sorry. I said that website seems to have bad intentions when I looked into it slightly, but I can see the way they frame things with a scientific angle. I'd have to do a real deep dive into the data that they supply and see where it comes from and how it's framed. Is it still hard to hear me? I thought it was because it was in my hand. It should be easier now, right? It's because I was holding it, the microphone. Can you hear me now? Cool. All right, man. I feel like they're just going to make us fight ourselves like they've been doing, and everything's gonna be just fine for them because we're too busy fighting ourselves. But yeah. I guess I'm just hanging out now. I like just hanging out. But I like knowing what I'm gonna do too, if that makes sense. Like, usually when I say, oh, I'm gonna do a hangout stream, I'll still spend 30 minutes like, okay, what am I gonna do during the hangout? And I'll get like some videos ready, prepare my tools. I guess I could look into that website more now, huh? I just I don't like unverifiable rabbit holes. That's why I skipped over the 9/11 conspiracies, man. They're designed to drive you crazy. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. A vertical world, yeah. Vertical war, vertical worlds, yeah. No, no, I've never heard of James Corbett. What does he do? Yeah. Well, what's James Corbett do? I googled it and like nothing comes up. I don't think the guy that you want me to see comes up. There's an old Edward James Corbett who used to be a hunter. Oh, interesting. I wonder what, that's probably why he doesn't come up when I Google him. It's because that's his claim to fame. And they censor that stuff. I'll have to write that down. I am actively looking at that geoengineering website, and it really does. It feels like a grifting website to me. But I'll have to investigate further. And I don't want to get into that rabbit hole right now. Like, I don't even think the people writing it are honest. Damn it, this pen's dried out. But yeah, I don't like making claims that I can't prove, so. I will say, don't ever trust Daily Mail, though. I know that off the rip. Come on. I need another pen. I just feel like when you get stuck in a conspiracy, it's like you're stuck in time. And by the time, like, say if you do figure something out, the world's already moved on. Sad to say. Like, we need to figure out how to deal with things now. But I'm curious to see if there's some Mossad connections. Yeah, because there's a verifiable chain of focus, right? The public was focused on missing money from the Pentagon. They were calling it a war on waste on the news. That's how much the people were focused on the missing money in the Pentagon. And then the day after they announced that they were going to do the audit, all of a sudden the war on waste is gone. And it's a war on terror. And I don't have to quote any conspiracy theories to say that. And that's already concerning. The sound is bad again? Why does that happen? I don't know why that happened. But yeah, the news was calling it a war on waste. And then before you knew it, it was a war on terror. And we're spending more money and we're not caring about the waste anymore. That should be concerning to any citizen. And then the Mossad connections, even those are easier to verify than some conspiracies, so that's really all it should take to convince people. But the fact that there are conspiracies makes people not even want to listen. When you say 9/11, it's like a trigger.
Now you commute with a TurboTax.
Sorry, I'm setting up.
When you wake up every single morning and you take a look in the mirror, you're 100% satisfied.
As quiet as a mouse, Japan has just unleashed one of its most innovative technologies. But that tech isn't being deployed in Japan itself. It's inside Ukraine, and it's busy making Putin's surprise aerial strikes absolutely powerless. What Japan just did for Ukraine is insane, as it has delivered a devastating blow to Russia without firing a single shot. Japan didn't need to. What it has delivered is the product of an alliance with Ukraine that Putin never saw coming. As the skies over Ukraine are polluted,
Right, I feel like we both win, even if you think that there's a bigger problem with the atmosphere. I feel like we both, with the spraying or whatever, we both win if we spread this vertical message, for sure.
Tech companies in Japan, with 650
See ya, man.
employees
Thanks for
and a
tuning
listing
in.
on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. It's a growing enterprise that has announced its entry into the defense sector and, crucially, makes about 60% of its revenue from alliances that it has built outside of Japan. That's where Ukraine comes into play. Deep in the frontline city of Kharkiv is a company named Amazing Drones. Couldn't be more different than Terra Drone Corporation in terms of how it was created. Where Terra was a business born from a desire to profit, Amazing Drones was created from the fires of a war that Ukraine never wanted to fight. But Amazing Drones has grown. What was a volunteer initiative 3 years ago has developed into a full-fledged company that is a major part of the Brave One defense cluster that Ukraine has set up to encourage its drone manufacturers to think big and create what Ukraine needs to defend itself. Now, Amazing Drones is working directly alongside Terra Drone Corporation, and they have developed a hugely important piece of technology that could put an end to Putin's surprise aerial bombardment strategy. That technology is the Terra A1. An interceptor drone that solves every problem that Ukraine has with Russia's Shahid-type long-range attack drones. Born from a meeting between Amazing Drones founder Maxim Klimenko and Terra Drone founder Toru Tokashiga at a defense exhibition in 2025, the Terra A1 is an absolute beast in anti-drone defense. With a top speed of 300 kilometers or about 186 miles per hour and a range of up to 35 kilometers, which is a little over 20 miles, this interceptor drone offers the speed and range needed to tackle Russia's incoming Shahid drones. It can also cover the full mission cycle for an interception, from initial surveillance to detecting targets and, finally, interception, all within a single 15-minute flight. Don't underestimate the importance of this speed. What the Terra A1 lacks in firepower, as it doesn't carry anything like the sort of warhead you would expect from an attack drone, it more than makes up for that by being 100 kilometers or about 62 miles per hour faster than Russia's typical Shahid-type drone. So this isn't just an interceptor that loiters and then gets into a position for a Shahid to strike it. The Terra A1 can hunt a Shahid down, chasing it in an inescapable drone death dance in the sky until it hits its mark and sends the Russian contraption back to Earth with a bang. Not that these death chases will always be needed. In fact, they may prove remarkably rare. As United 24 Media points out, the Terra A1 is a stealthy drone. With its electric propulsion system, it emits very little noise and practically no heat signature, making it incredibly difficult to detect for a Shahid drone operator back in Russia. In many cases, the only sign that a Terra A1 is coming would be if the interceptor flies in clear view of the cameras set up in a Shahid drone. In most cases, the Terra A1 will loiter, spot a target, and blow it up before the operator even knows it's coming. Oh, and the Terra A1 can operate independently of an operator. It's an intelligent drone that can blow up Russia's Shahids without extensive training, be that of the drone itself or the operator controlling it. And here's where it gets serious. The Terra A1 costs just $2,000 to build. Stick with us and you'll find out why that's so important, but for now, the partnership that has produced this drone is still in the very early stages of development, and scaling is next on the horizon. Terra Drone has already put its money where its mouth is. A $10 million investment has been made to fund the production of Terra A1 drones through one of its subsidiaries. This is capital that provides more benefits for Ukraine than the money itself. Interest rates on Japanese capital are around 2%, while those in Ukraine itself hover around 20%. What we see here is an investment of cheaper cash than Amazing Drones could get in its own country, and that money is going to be used to build more Terra A1s than Russia can handle. Right now, production is relatively slow. A single worker can put together 2 Terra A1s per day, and it's unknown how many workers Amazing Drones has in its workshops. But processes are being streamlined, money is pouring in, and very soon the Terra A1 is going to be manufactured at a scale that could make it one of the most important tools that Ukraine has for defending its skies and its people against the scourge of Russia's Shahids. That scaling will have to take place under fire, and Tokushiga knows that the traditional sort of factory isn't the answer. Such factories become targets, but as the Terra Drone founder says, Ukrainian engineers already have practical know-how, how to decentralize production and operate under constant threat. We are studying and considering this approach as well. What we see in that seemingly innocuous statement is that it's far from a one-way partnership. Ukraine is getting new interceptor drones, but Japan is getting knowledge and experience that is combat-tested and very much needed in a world that is increasingly plunging into chaos. Terra Drone is already considering launching the production of Ukrainian drones on Japanese soil. There, they can be built both to benefit Japan and potentially to be sent to Ukraine for use against Putin's forces. What we're seeing here is as important as the Terra A1 itself, as Ukraine is forging a relationship with a major Japanese company that is spilling over into a wider relationship with Japan itself. We've seen inklings of this happening already. Japan has been a constant supporter of Ukraine in its war against Russia, though predominantly on the humanitarian side. In February, Japan pledged $3.8 million to help Ukraine repair some of its cultural sites that have been damaged during the war. Another $1.3 billion had been pledged to Ukraine under the Japanese Peace in Ukraine project as of April 1st. And also in February, the UN announced that the United Nations Industrial Development Organization has concluded a series of grant agreements with 47 Japanese companies that will start testing their business models and technologies inside Ukraine. These are signs of a burgeoning relationship between two powerful nations. The alliance between Amazing Drones and Terra Drone is just one of many examples, and there's more. In March, the governments of Ukraine and Japan began preparing an intergovernmental partnership that facilitates the transfer of defense equipment and technologies. The idea is to help the two countries participate in more joint production, which in turn will lead to localization projects focused on weapons. Already, Japan is looking into purchasing Ukrainian attack drones, which could become a key part of its offensive arsenal if tensions erupt in the Indo-Pacific. For Ukraine, partnerships like these ensure a regular influx of weapons and money, both of which it can use to defend itself against Russia. Ukraine is becoming a major player in a global geopolitical context, and none of this would be happening if Putin hadn't made the dumb decision over 4 years ago to launch a full-scale invasion of a country that he thought would crumble in days. Ukraine stood firm. It's been doing that for over 4 years. And the
just got back from the cinema after watching Exit 8, a movie that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, but you really shouldn't because it is impressively good, especially for a video game adaptation. Exit 8 is based on a game of the same name, and really a game that kind of popularized the anomaly hunting genre of horror games, which is a genre that I've really started to fall in love with. Every time I play an anomaly hunting game for the gaming channel, I get fucking hearts in my eyes like an anime character. It's just a lot of fun, and Exit 8 was what really, propelled it into the, mainstream consciousness. Also, the gaming channel, Moist Critical Gaming, is by far the best gaming channel on YouTube. Just started my Sly Cooper marathon as well, so now's the perfect time to go subscribe over there, but I'm playing fucking hundreds of games a month for that. Anyway, Exit 8 is a very solid game, but I had no clue there would ever be the potential to make a good movie out of it, because it's very simple. You are trapped in an endlessly looping subway tunnel, and every time you try and go forward, you end up just going back to the very beginning. The only way to escape is by checking everything with a fine-tooth comb to see if there's anything that has changed, anything that's out of the ordinary about this corridor, and if there's any anomalies there that you detect, if something's out of whack, then you have to turn around and go the other way in order to progress, and you do this until you reach Exit 8. Like, it's a very simple game premise that was really fun. It had a lot of cool, anomalies that they threw at you. But there was not like a big in-depth story that, would get players invested in the character you play. So I really just didn't think that there was any potential for a movie to spawn from it. And if there was, it'd just be like some boring-ass cash grab. That is not the case with Exit 8. This film fucking slaps. They did an incredible job. The whole first, like, 15, 20-ish minutes of the film is POV. It is first person of the character that we are following, and it actually feels straight out of the game. Except, they don't just toss you in there and start hunting anomalies. It gives you a character to care about. He is a very passive guy. He's on the subway. There's a lady with a baby that the baby is crying, and now she's getting berated by an angry rider, an angry passenger there, and he just tries to tune it out, go about his day, just trying to avoid confrontation the best of his ability, and just fly under the radar. He then gets a call from his ex and learns that she is pregnant, and that's when kind of the core of the movie, the heartbeat of the movie, takes form about, is he going to step up to be a father? What will you decide? That's like the big thing. What is the choice that he is going to make? And while on this phone call, he ends up getting trapped in this looping subway passageway, the subway tunnel. And then it becomes very familiar because they got this one-to-one with the game. It is like exactly the same as the game, which was very fucking cool. But even if you haven't played the game, it's very interesting. So he starts to piece together that something's wrong because he's just doing these fucking loops. There's some weird wacko that just keeps walking at him that won't interact. He looks like a robot, just some kind of NPC that's glitching out. And he just keeps walking, and then sometimes it goes kind of tits up. This guy will turn around and like follow him while smiling. It's odd. And then he starts to panic, but then he notices the information on the wall tells him how to get out of here, the same way the tutorial in the game does. So then
What the fuck of movie is this?
Go gadgets, goes full fucking inspector mode there on the tunnel, and tries to deduce whether or not it's anomaly ridden
I'm having a brain
or
fart.
clear. And it's always tough because sometimes there's some very obvious blatant ones like fucking big old tsunami that blasts through, and sometimes it's very subtle ones like one of the poster's eyes moved, that kind of thing. I think they did a great job of staying true to the game there and making it tense on the big
Oh, is it
screen. I
Layers
thought
of
they
Fear?
really
That's
played
right.
around with the concept very well. But what really elevates this from just a gimmick movie into just like a very
I wanna
solid
see
movie
it.
on its own two legs is that this is a character that you actually root for. It's a character that grows steadily in this environment. So he starts as like a very passive guy and just trying to like avoid things and kind of duck his head. He doesn't think he's ready to be a father. Now I want to avoid big spoilers for this because I think it's detrimental if I just divulge a ton of things about the movie here, and I really think this is a movie worth watching. So I'm only going to touch on tiny spoilers here to continue to glaze it and also address one of the main complaints people have about this film that I kind of disagree with. But anyway, that's your little spoiler warning. Since he starts as this passive character, it seems like he's always leaning towards just ducking out and just avoiding anything that might be too hard for him. But now that he's in this endless looping tunnel, he has to really start evolving. He needs to start growing.
Yeah, Layers of Fear is a
And
good
I
game.
think they really play around with that well. And it's not just him. They introduced two other characters as well, such as the Walking Man, who was a really interesting character. It wasn't like just some flat throwaway character. They fleshed him out in a really fascinating way. And then there's also a boy that gets introduced here. And that is when the whole thing changes. So, once he figures out the rules here and how to escape, he starts, learning, the second I see an anomaly, turn around and go the other way because it might be dangerous if I don't. So when he's doing one of his investigations, he instantly sees a child there. Just this boy that's standing in the middle, so he's like, yep, obviously that's a fucking anomaly. So he turns around and goes the other way and
Whoops, wrong
expecting it
button.
to progress, but it actually resets his progress to 0. And he realizes, oh, that wasn't an anomaly. That's actually just a child that's also trapped in this as well. And then the two of them work together to try and get out. But it's obviously not that simple, and now he has to kind of be like a father to this child here and protect him. He takes on a more protective role when, before he arrived at this endless subway tunnel, he might have just did exactly what he did on the subway itself and just tune it out, ignore it, and go about his business by himself because it would have been easier. But he steps up here as he continues to grow. I think it's a gradual, well-done development of this character through a really interesting way, and it's also shot in a very interesting way. It's not like the craziest cinematography ever, but it's really well done, and it makes you care, and it keeps the shots interesting, which also elevates like the anomaly scares and frights and spooky stuff, that kind of thing when the anomalies happen. And
The
that brings me to
spooky
what
stuff.
it seems like a handful of people are really complaining about with the movie, and that's the fact that he doesn't always just immediately turn around and leave the second that he notices there's an anomaly. He, and by extension the child, investigate the anomalies, which that people are chalking up to being bad decision making. In the game, for instance, in Exit 8 the game, the second you see an anomaly, you basically sprint back the other way in order to
Oh, it's
progress in
Exit
the game.
8.
In the movie, he tried that with the child, and it turns out that wasn't an anomaly. So I actually think they do a good job of showing why he investigates the anomalies more so after that, because he had already tried just instantly turning around when he thought he saw an anomaly, only to realize, nope, that was normal. So I feel like that makes sense there, but also there's a bigger messaging with it. And this is where it's going to be spoilery. There's no way to avoid this. This is a bigger spoiler. But him investigating the anomalies is what helps him grow as a character. Like, for instance, the most important moment in the film was the anomaly where the door opens, which the second the door opened, they could have turned around and left and it would have been correct, because obviously something's out of whack, it's an anomaly, and you have to go the other way to progress. But they open the door fully to see what's on the other side, which everyone's like, why would you do that? That's fucking stupid. These are dumb characters making dumb decisions. And yes, it is a dangerous decision. They could have just opened that up into like a fucking wood chipper or something, or just fell into an endless void like the Oblivion, just this giant shithole. Very possible. But the messaging there, when they open it, what he sees is himself on that
I haven't
subway
seen a movie in
ignoring
theater in a
the
long
woman
time.
and the baby that are in distress because of this.
You are looking at something you're not supposed to see. Well, at least not like this. The image on your screen is coming from 1/3 of the business end of a video projector. This image is the second third, and this one is the third third. That's right, it's our old friends red, green, and blue, the primary colors of almost all modern display technologies. But for some reason, they've been separated. If we zoom out a bit, we'll find that we've been looking through the lenses of this device, a Sony VPH-D50HT Mark II. And for many years, when we needed a
I love
large,
learning about old tech.
full-color video screen, this is how we did it. If you're my age or older, you might remember seeing these triclopses out in the wild. I have a particularly burned-in memory of one of these in a party room at a local entertainment center, and I also remember seeing one on an airplane. By the turn of the millennium,
Airplane? What the
these
fuck?
were starting to go out of fashion for reasons which will become very obvious, but because of the technology inside of here, this device produces a shockingly good projected image, especially considering its age. It has fantastic color rendering, and it doesn't struggle in dark scenes like so many projectors do. In fact, when displaying a black video signal, the screen is truly black. And these support much higher video resolutions than you might expect. This model originally came out in 1998, yet it natively supports 1080i component video and can even go a little higher with an RGB input. In fact, the technology itself has a theoretically unlimited resolution. That's because behind each of its 3 lenses is a cathode ray tube. That's right, this is a CRT projector. But rather than use a single color CRT like you'd find in an ordinary television set, this uses 3 monochrome CRTs, one red, one green, and one blue. Then, the 3 images each produces are merged into one on the projection surface, and that produces a full color image. This technique has lots of advantages, but it also requires an astounding level of complexity and precision. This is a red CRT from a similar model of projector, and you may notice there's some very odd stuff going on here. For one, there's quite the lens strapped to the front of it, and it appears to be filled with some kind of liquid. Yeah, this is higher tech than it looks at first glance. But the basic idea of projecting an image from a small CRT like this is much older than this device, and in fact dates back to the earliest days of television. These are the guts of a television set from 1950-something. And these are socks! The Technology Connection socks I let you know about in my previous video. Now, if you didn't see that, I'm not just telling you about these socks to make a quick buck. In fact, these are a collaboration between myself and the folks at Good Store. That means that all the profit that's generated from the sale of these socks is donated to charity. These socks will help Partners in Health operate the Maternal Center of Excellence in Sierra Leone. We're coming into the final days of orders being open for these, so I'm letting you know this is your last chance to get them. The Good Store team worked with independent artists and myself to design 12 Technology Connections-inspired socks. We are selling them as a prepaid subscription, meaning you only pay once, and if you choose to purchase it, you'll have a full year of delightful sock surprises arriving at your door each month starting in January. And we have a 6-month option too. The socks are shipped in flat, compostable envelopes that go through the mail as if they are a letter. I've been a member of the Awesome Socks Club for years, and let me tell you, a monthly sock surprise is just so much fun. You can buy it for yourself or for someone else as a gift. Orders are going to be closing October 12th, and then they will never be available again, so if you want to warm your feet with socks that highlight my particular flavor of eccentricity and help mothers and children in a region of the world with one of the highest infant mortality rates, well, you'll find links to get these in all the places. Thank you so much. And now, back to this thing. This black and white television receiver is actually not that complex. It looks like a jumbled mess of hand-soldered parts, because that's what it is, but there really aren't that many parts in here. This is the schematic diagram for the whole thing. It's mostly the same bunch of capacitors, resistors, vacuum tubes, coils, and potentiometers you'd find in any radio receiver. Sure, there are many more of them than a typical radio, but there's not much to this which isn't just radio parts. That is, except for 3 key things: the deflection yoke, which steers the electron beam that draws images on the picture tube, the flyback transformer, which generates the roughly 15,000 volts needed to make the picture tube function, and of course, the picture tube itself. Now, you might have caught a little thing about 15,000 volts. Yeah, here's the part where I say playing with CRTs is dangerous. Not only do the drive electronics produce extremely high voltage, but the Aquadag coating on the inside and outside of the glass picture tube turns it into a giant capacitor, which is able to store a lethal charge long after the TV has been switched off. So don't screw around with these, but especially don't screw around with really old ones, because electric shock is not the only danger here. This picture tube does not have integrated implosion protection, which makes handling it rather risky. If you've ever wondered why very old TVs had a flat sheet of glass in front of the actual picture tube, that was safety glass put there to protect it from you and to protect you from it should it one day violently implode into flying shards of glass. Yay! Anywho, I brought this out because the picture tube is the part that made televisions so expensive. Electronically, it's not really any more complicated than the other vacuum tubes in here, but it's still a vacuum tube. It cannot have any air inside of it or it won't work. And that made them very difficult to manufacture in large sizes, because the bigger you make the viewing screen, the more area the atmosphere has to work with to try and crush the tube. That is made worse by the fact that a larger screen also requires the electron gun to be farther away from the front of the tube, which means the sides of the tube also have to get bigger and also become more vulnerable to atmospheric crushing. Now, obviously, we did eventually figure out how to make picture tubes with large viewing screens. Here is one of them. But before we did, people were experimenting with optical trickery. Rather than try and make a fragile, bigger tube, you could use a small picture tube like this and make it much brighter. Then you could use lenses to magnify and project an image of this small screen onto a larger viewing surface. This was surprisingly common in the early post-war television sets of the 1940s. And in fact, some of the earliest television receivers which were sold were basically what today we would call video projectors. They weren't that different from this much newer device, though they had a single black and white picture tube and a single projecting lens. This technique worked to make a larger viewing screen, but it came with significant downsides. First, I don't want to mislead you, the viewing screens were not actually that big. Those early projection systems should really be thought of as a way to make normal-sized TV screens cheaper. And in the spirit of cheap, the image quality wasn't that great. Rear projection systems, where the CRT was behind a translucent screen, tended to have poor contrast in the best of cases with a somewhat fuzzy image. And front projection systems required the room to be absolutely dark to see anything at all. And in both cases, the CRT needed to be driven really hard in order to produce a bright enough image to be projected, and that meant they wore out quickly and needed frequent replacement, which negated much of the savings. These downsides combined meant that once large direct view picture tubes could be economically manufactured,
Let's watch the anime.